Howdy, everybody. I am Alan Bean with yet another Bean on the scene, and let's get to it. There have been no transfer portal or scheduling updates for college football. I'm still waiting to see when the Mountain West will finalize their stuff. I tried looking online, couldn't find anything, but everything still is the same as last week. So let's go right into college basketball, starting with the men's team for BYU. After a two-game skid from Arizona and Cincinnati, BYU is looking to get back to their winning ways on the road against West Virginia. From opening tip-off, you could tell that both teams really wanted to leave with a win and didn't want to give the opponent any sense of hope. BYU was constantly within grasp of the lead in the first half, but went into the locker room trailing 34 to 32. Every time Richie Saunders or Cannon Catchings would make a basket, Amani Hansberry and Javon Small would find a way to keep the West Virginia lead. Wasn't until about the final 5 minutes when BYU started finding some momentum with Jaeger Demon, who scored 6 of BYU's final 8 points, which Demon finished the game with 16 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists in the 73 to 69 win over West Virginia. Now, with a little momentum on their side, BYU traveled back to Provo to take on Kansas State. That momentum was clear from opening tip-off as BYU had an 18-point lead going into the half. There were a lot of impressive performances from Kiba Keita, who had 9 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 blocks. Dallin Hall, who had a season high of 16 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals. And then Richie Saunders getting a double-double with 17 points, 14 rebounds, and with 5 of those rebounds being offensive, 2 assists, and then 2 steals, along with Jaeger Demon, who had 5 points, 1 rebound, and 8 assists, with only 2 turnovers, leading to a convincing 80 to 65 win over the Wildcats. With these games out of the way, according to Joe Lenardi's bracketology, BYU now currently sits at a number 10 seed. BYU's next 2 games will arguably be BYU's toughest week of the season, starting off tonight, Tuesday, February 18th. Um, they will be taking on. Oh, my notes are not correct. There we go. On February 18th, they will be taking on number 23 Kansas, who is the number 5 seed in bracketology. It's a tough, even competition, but given Kansas' recent loss, I think that they might be back with some vengeance, so that might not work out in BYU's favor. That game will be broadcasted on ESPN at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And then they will have a game on Saturday, February 22nd, on Saturday, at number 19 Arizona. They are currently a number 3 seed in bracketology, second in the conference with a 12-3 record, which it should be a very tough battle, but it should be a must-watch game. And ESPN thought the same thing because it will also be broadcasted there at 8 p.m. Mountain Time on Saturday. Now for BYU's women's team, BYU played arguably their toughest stretch of the season this past week, playing 2 top 25 teams. First, they were on the road to face number 11 TCU, and the game wasn't even close. Even with Emma Calver and Delaney Gibb combining for a total of 30 points, TCU outscoring BYU 18-4 in the fourth quarter made this game look way out of hand than it actually was, as TCU got the 79-47 win over the Cougars. Now, after that disappointing loss, BYU had to keep that memory in the past as they traveled back home to Provo to face number 20 Oklahoma State. Though the first quarter looked a little rocky for BYU as they trailed 19-12, they began to find their footing from that point on. They were battling uphill for most of the game till Calver and Gibb called the game in the fourth quarter. The two of them scored 17 of BYU's final 21 points in the fourth to get the upset over Oklahoma State 68-64. Now, the Lady Cougars, they are going to be back in action tomorrow on Wednesday, February 19th at Arizona, which I believe should be a pretty even comp. And then they'll have a game on Saturday, February 22nd versus Arizona State, which they are near the very bottom of their conference with a 2-12 record. So hopefully that should be a good win for BYU. But, it's college basketball. Anything can happen. Now, for the University of Utah men's team, the Runnin' Utes, Utah had a tough turnaround this week as they played 3 games in 7 days. Their first game was against Cincinnati, which I thought would be a tough rematch, and Utah, they proved that that was the case. Even with Gabe Madsen tying his season high in points with 28, Jizzle James with 25 points, 2 rebounds, and six assists, and the Bearcats took down the Runnin' Utes 85-75. Their next game would be in front of a national audience as Utah welcomed ESPN and the number 17 Kansas Jayhawks to the Huntsman Center. On paper, it looked as if Kansas was going to walk away with an easy win, but Utah was not going to go down without a fight. Utah had players that were leaving everything on the court, like Jake Wallen. He's got his first career double double with 10 points and 12 rebounds, which was a career high. Ezra Asar had 12 points and 8 rebounds. Keanu Dawes had 10 boards off of the bench. And then Gabe Madsen passing Nick Jacobson for the all time leader in 3-point shots made in University of Utah history, now with 288, which that three came off of his fifth three of the night with just under 2 minutes left in the game. With these great performances, Utah was able to pull off a 74-67 upset against Kansas, and Utah didn't get to relive that win for too long because then they had to take on the other school in Kansas, Kansas State, on Monday. Brendan Housen, he was lights out from three for Kansas State. He was 5 for 11. Every time Housen shot the ball, it just kind of felt like it was going to go in. But with the quick turnaround, Lawson Lovering got the start and made the most of it with 15 points and 10 rebounds, with 6 of those being offensive, paired with Ezra Asar, who led all scorers with 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists. Utah's front court was able to frustrate the Wildcats, leading to a 74-69 win for Utah. Now, for Utah's upcoming games, after playing 3 games in 7 days, Utah will get a bit of rest as they won't play their next game until Sunday, February 23rd at UCF. UCF, they are 4-10 in the conference, so that should play into Utah's favor, but who knows? It is a road game. For Utah's women, they are going into the week on a 5-game winning streak and having arguably their easiest conference stretch of the season. Utah was looking to hit the ground running against Colorado and Arizona State. Utah was able to handle business against both Colorado, winning 77-60, and Arizona State winning 98-62. These wins propelled Utah to a 6th seed in Joe Lunardi's bracketology and aren't looking to slow down their 7-game win streak. Now, they have the opportunity to continue that win streak tonight on Tuesday, February 18th, at home versus number 24, Oklahoma State. They are considered an 8th seed, considered a tough comp as well. And even though Utah is the unranked team in this matchup, they are considered the favorites according to ESPN with an 80% chance to win. And then their other game this week is going to be on Sunday, February 23rd at Cincinnati. Cincinnati is middle of the pack, so I do believe Utah should be able to handle that one. But, those are the teams that tend to sneak up on the contenders. Now, for the Utah State men's team, even with 2 straight wins under their belt, those wins didn't feel too convincing, but hoping to have a more convincing win against Colorado State. Even with a 45-30 win going into the half, USU allowed 55 points to Colorado State in the second half, just almost giving that lead away. But for their sake, thankfully, that 15-point lead going into the half ended up being Utah State's savior as they won 93-85. Now, just 2 weeks removed from their previous matchup, Utah State had the opportunity to even the score against New Mexico, who they had lost to at home by 19. This one looked like more of a battle of the top dogs of the Mountain West. It was a back and forth battle. Whenever someone had the upper hand, the opposing team would fight right back just to make sure that it was a one-possession game. Mason Falslev really put the Aggies on his back with 27 points, 6 rebounds, and 1 assist, along with 5 steals. But Donovan Dent and True Washington wanted to destroy Utah State's hope, combining for 48 points on 59.3% shooting from the field, 54.5% shooting from the perimeter, and 76.9% from the free throw line. This one ended in a dramatic fashion with 4 seconds left in the game. Utah State was down by 4, and Falslev hit a clutch 3 to put Utah State down 80-79. A quick foul that went ahead and sent New Mexico to the line, and making both of those free throws put the score at 82-79 with just 1 second left on the clock. Now, They put all of their faith into Ian Martinez to put up a prayer from half court, and unfortunately, that ball did not go in. So Utah State fell to New Mexico once again, but this time 82 to 79. Now, with their upcoming games, they will play tomorrow, Wednesday, February 19th, versus San Jose State. That game can be heard on KSL Sports Zone on 97.5 FM and 1280 AM with Scotty G starting at 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time. And then on Saturday, February 22nd, they will be at home versus San Diego State, which that game can be seen on CBS Sports Network at 6 p.m. Or you can listen on the KSL Sports Zone again with Scotty G at 5:30 for pregame. They won their previous games against both of those schools this season, so these hopefully should work out in their favor. But they are must wins as they have to keep that status if they want to try and be at the top of the Mountain West. Now, for the Utah State women's team, nothing has changed. More losses. Uh, they're now 2-23 on the season, 1-12 in conference. But at least they're going to have a home game against Air Force tomorrow on Wednesday, February 19th. It's an early game at 11 a.m., but again, still not too hopeful. And then they will be traveling to New Mexico. We'll see if they can try and finish these games within 10 points. Hopefully, they'll be in their favor. But again, based off of how they played this season, not too hopeful. Now for Utah Valley, this one got a little scary for them. They're still considered in the NCAA tournament as they are number one in the WAC, but they took on the Southern Utah Thunderbirds, and it came down to the final possession. UVU, they were trying to make sure that this one didn't get as close as it did, but after some free throws from Tanner Toulson, SUU got the ball in their hands and they gave it to Jameer Simpson, who hit his first and only three of the night to bring the score 70 to 68. UVU had the ball with 3 seconds left and they inbounded it to Trevin Leonhardt, who chucked the ball just to waste some time so then it could save UVU's hope for March Madness. Now, as far as their upcoming games, they will be at Utah Tech on Thursday, February 20th. They are last in the Mountain West, so I'm not too concerned about that game for the Wolverines. But then on Saturday, they will be back at home on February 22nd to take on Seattle. They are middle of the pack, and don't let that fool you. Seattle, they are under 500 in both conference and overall play. Now that we got collegiate sports all done, let's move on to the Utah Jazz. After their first meeting with Luka Doncic in the Lakers uniform went, as a lot of people thought, including myself, didn't think that there was going to be much of a fight in this one from Utah, but I was wrong. Larry Markkinen showed the flash of the all-star of the past. He finished the night with 32 points and 5 rebounds, shooting 11 of 18 from the field and 6 of 10 from the perimeter. At halftime, which was a great sight to see, you rarely see this, especially from the Utah Jazz. There were 4 players that were in triple-double watch. Jordan Clarkson, Isaiah Collier, Keontae George, and Walker Kessler. Unfortunately, none of them reached that mark, but all had great performances as Clarkson finished the night with 21 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists. Collier with 10 points, 7 rebounds, 9 assists. George with 20 points, 7 rebounds, 10 assists. And then Kessler with 16 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 blocks. Though all the focus was on Luka Doncic, who had 16 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists, and LeBron James with 18 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists, Austin Reeves was the player that really shined for the Lakers as he finished with 15 points, 5 rebounds, and 11 assists. Reeves didn't have a great shooting night, but he was able to find the open man whenever the shot wasn't there. Another big surprise that came out of this one was that Bronny James got 8 minutes in this one, and he made those minutes count. He was 3 of 4 from the field, 2 of 3 from the perimeter, including a very nice step back 3 that got the crowd roaring. But big surprise to everyone, the Utah Jazz got the unprecedented win, 131 to 119. Now, due to the fires that were in Los Angeles, Utah had a game rescheduled for the day before the All-Star break against the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, with Kessler being a late scratch in this one, Kyle Filipowski moved up into the starting lineup. Filipowski, he did become a liability on the defensive end since the Clippers knew to attack him as much as they possibly could, but that led to Flip eventually fouling out. But he did end up leaving with a career high with 20 points. Collier, he looked like he was trying to force the ball into passing lanes that just weren't there. And even though he continued his streak of 21 straight games with at least 7 assists, he met that number with turnovers with 7. The Clippers weren't going to let the Utah Jazz down easy as James Harden finished the night with 32 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists, and Norman Powell with 41 points, 3 rebounds, and 1 assist. They just couldn't miss. And even Ben Simmons, who made his Clippers debut that night, also had a solid, convincing performance with 7 rebounds, 6 assists to go along with his 12 points. Now, this game would go into overtime after things were tied at 108 at the end of regulation, but Powell went on a heater, accounting for 9 of the Clippers' 12 overtime points to give them the 120 to 116 win going into the break. After that game, Keontae George had to immediately get onto a flight to San Francisco to compete in the Rising Stars Challenge during the All-Star break. Now, with the way that uh, challenge was set up, was that there were going to be multiple teams all kind of doing a round robin, and then the winner would move on to the All-Star game on Sunday with their new format, which Keontae George for his team scored 13 points and 3 assists, and not to mention the game winner to help him advance to Sunday's game against the true All-Stars. Now, for that game on Sunday, Keontae George hit the opening 3 and then went silent. And then they end up losing to the likes of Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and many others. It was a great experience for Keontae, but now it's time for him to get some rest, which is much needed, especially after playing 3 straight days. But with his last game being on Sunday, he is not back in action until Friday, February 21st against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then they are going to do a back-to-back on Saturday on February 22nd versus the Houston Rockets. And then they will get Sunday off and then back in action on Monday versus the Portland Trailblazers. Now, this is the final stretch for the Poop for Coop campaign. Utah needs to do what they need to do to get the best possible draft odds if you are pro tank. But overall, I am enjoying how they are playing, especially with the emergence of Isaiah Collier and Keontae George able to mesh very well on the court and seeing some of these guys just go ham. Now, for the Utah Hockey Club, they did not have any games because we are still in the Four Nations break for this past week, which there were 2 Utah Hockey Club representatives during this break with Olli Mata and Juuso Välimäki. They were representing their home country of Finland for this tournament. Välimäki, he did not see the ice, but Mata, he made his presence known, leading Finland's defensemen in points with 2, both of them coming off of assists. Now, speaking of that Four Nations tournament, if you are proud to rep red, white, and blue when it comes to sporting events like myself, the USA played Canada, and it felt like a match that will be made into a Disney film. It felt like Miracle all over again. High energy, crowd was really into it the entire time, and the viewership, it showed about 4.4 million consistent viewers. It peaked at 5.2, and just before the recording, it was also stated that there was a total of about 10.4 different viewers throughout that game. And I mean, it was a great match altogether. First 9 seconds, getting 3 different fights, especially with the Kachuk brothers. It was electric, and it felt like these guys truly hated each other and wanted to make sure that they represented their country the best way possible. And the U.S. came out on top with that game with a 3-1 win. But Canada will be able to get their chance at redemption versus the USA on Thursday in the championship game at 6 p.m. Mountain Time on ESPN. You best believe that I'm going to be tuning in. I'm assuming the Canadians are going to be playing with vengeance, and it's going to be a game you're going to want to watch. But as far as the Utah Hockey Club, their upcoming games is going to start back on Saturday, February 22nd at the Los Angeles Kings. And then on Sunday, they will be back at home on February 23rd versus the Vancouver Canucks, which in our next segment, you will have the chance to win a pair of tickets to that game if you can answer the question that is at the very end of this episode. And the winner for that giveaway will be chosen on Friday. And I will reach out to you through DMs, and you can also see the winners through that on X, Blue Sky. And joining us today, we have the one, the only Justin Valentini, the man that lets me know that I am not good at 2K by any means. How you doing, Justin?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Like, it's really awesome that not only can I have somebody that can move forward in the industry in the world of sports and teach me about a world that I'm very unfamiliar with, but I can also like have a friend on the show and just be like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
this is business." Um, but for those of you that don't know who this man is, why don't you let the crowd know who Justin Valentini is?
All right. I am Justin Valentini, married with a little girl that is actually sitting next to me. I work in the sports card industry. A lot of people that even collected as a kid and that are in their 30s and 40s, like myself, are getting back into the hobby and into the sports card business. So essentially, what we do at Top Notch Sports Club is we do online breaks where we stream breaks on YouTube and Facebook. We do eBay consignments for customers, so we will sell people's cards, collectibles, things like that for them. And then we also do grading of cards, which is obviously slabbing and encasing a card and giving a numerical grade to hopefully increase the value of the item.
And with that grading service, is that strictly PSA, or do you work across
So
multiple
we
companies?
work with right now we work with PSA and we do SGC. We're doing BGS, but we have discontinued them for the time being due to some issues with that company. So, but we will also do CGC, but no, most of the time it's PSA and SGC.
And then as far as like getting into that industry, like you said, it's a lot of people that are getting back into the hobby, reliving, getting out of
Oh yeah.
school, using the little bit of money that you had to get however many packs that the store clerk would let you get. How did you specifically get into this industry?
So I was actually a customer of Top Notch Sports Club years ago. I got back into cards. I started collecting coins when I was younger, and then it kind of got a little boring for me. And I've always loved sports. And one day I found my old card collection in the garage, and I started going through it. And I then started looking at how to ways to buy more and get more active with it. And I found this group randomly through Facebook and joined it and started being a customer. And at that time, after a while, I grew a friendship with the owner of Top Notch Sports Club. And eventually he asked me to come work with him. And that's how I actually became, not just a hobbyist anymore, but actually invested and employed in the industry itself.
And going from being a fan, like what are your fandoms as far as teams, whether it's baseball, basketball, football, hockey, or wrestling, MMA? Who are the teams and people that you are looking
So
forward to in your own spare time?
I grew up on the East Coast in Connecticut, and I've always been infatuated with the New York sports teams. I'm a diehard Yankees fan, Giants fan, Knicks fan. In terms of UFC, I'm a big UFC fan. I've always been a Bones Jones fan. Not his personal life, but the way he fights. That's really been the biggest thing. But for me, my passion has always been baseball. I know yours is you love hockey, you love basketball. I've always been a baseball fanatic.
So now when you're looking at those sports teams, like there's a wide variety of different sports and teams that you're interested in. What is your favorite sports moment that either you have personally experienced or one that you can just relive, whether it's your favorite team or just a moment in sports that just will never leave you?
2009 Yankees World Series win.
Why is that?
I'm I'm the guy that I'm a huge Alex Rodriguez fan. I loved him coming up in Seattle. I love the way he played shortstop. I love the way he hit. And when they won that chip with him and that team, and it was just special because I was old enough to enjoy it. You know, the earlier dynasties, I was younger. I didn't really understand sports as much as I did when I was an adult when that happened.
See, and granted, that is a full blown championship. None of the teams that I support have won one, so
Hey,
that
I'm a
is
Knicks
something.
fan, so I
So like for me, the one moment that I love to relive, just because not a lot of people can say they've done this, but also believe it was 2009 as well, but earlier in the year in January, when the University of Utah beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl.
Oh, okay. I forgot about that. You're right.
And like that's like a little moment of glory, a little badge I can wear. Like, yeah, we beat Saban in his prime.
Yeah.
So like that, it may not be a significant moment for a lot of other people, but it's a game where I can just be like, yeah, that was when Nick Saban was not paying players, right? As Pat McAfee liked to allude to.
Yeah.
Um, but now that we've unraveled like who your teams are, what are some cards of maybe say your favorite teams, or what is your all-time favorite card since you've joined the
All right.
business or even as a kid?
My all-time favorite card, obviously, is the 1952 Mickey Mantle. It's one of the most iconic sports cards in the world. I can't afford it, but I would love to own one someday. I mean, it's the highest selling card of all time. There's only, I think, two tens in existence, and they're worth, I think, over $10 million right now. And
Yeah, a
the
little
crazy
out of my budget.
about the card is it's not even his rookie. The 51 Bowman was his rookie. This was a second card, but it's such an iconic card, and you know, I remember talking about my dad how he had one in his bicycle spokes when he was a kid because that's what they did, and he remembers it to this day, and it hurts, but
Yeah, you're like, do you know how much your little
yeah,
clicking in the back of your bike could have made me?
yeah, that's why they're worth so much because so many people didn't take care of those cards back then. They didn't think they were ever going to be worth 6, 7, sometimes 8 figures.
And funny enough, a little bit of a curveball here for you. I was reorganizing some new cards that I just got into my collection as of yesterday,
Yep.
and it made me realize how many cards I bought. And I was like, ugh. But
Been
I
there.
came across a documentary on Amazon Prime about the sports card industry.
Yep.
And it came out maybe 2, 3 years ago, and it had like Steve Aoki in there,
He's a big time UFC collector.
and what's funny is he talked about like, hey, the pandemic was what got me into this, and the pandemic is what saved but ruined the industry. And I was curious if
Oh,
you
I
feel the
agree.
same way.
Yes, I agree. So when the pandemic happened, the sports card market absolutely exploded. For example, Michael Jordan 86 Fleer rookie card, PSA 9, would normally sell for like two, three, $4,000, back then. Then the pandemic hit, and that card, I think at the height hit 90,000. That's the huge increase. That actual pandemic is what was so much money was coming in. It allowed Anthony and me. Anthony is the owner of Top Notch, by the way. I don't think I addressed that. To actually move out to Cleveland and work directly with him. I was working remotely in Connecticut, on a part-time basis, but that explosion was the ability for me to make the next leap and come out here. But he's right; it did also simultaneously ruin the hobby because it was 95% businesses and business capitalists and exploding the market versus the true hobbyists were kind of being pushed out because they could no longer afford anything because the prices were so high. And to this day, we've seen the prices haven't come down as much as they should have, where the interest has been taken out. At one point, there was like venture capitalist firms that were actually buying sports cards as holdings instead of stocks.
Yeah, and one thing that I was really enjoying about this documentary is that they really started saying that these live breaks is what's really keeping people interested in the hobby and still
Yeah.
allowing people to feel like they can invest into the hobby itself, because you have a bunch of people that will go to, say, Walmarts or Targets as scalpers, and they'll just eat up the stock as much as they can, or even have employees that will buy it out before the doors open. Um, so that's where I thought it was really cool, because I'm sitting here thinking, I think I've entered in maybe one or two of your breaks, and I didn't luck out, unfortunately.
Kyle
Uh,
did.
yeah, that's the thing. Like, we've had friends that have invested into
Yeah.
your breaks and they've gotten lucky, but unfortunately, the teams that I want to invest in, there's not a lot going on,
Yeah.
or at least what I would consider high valued cards. So, you
It can
win
be a
some, you lose
gamble for
some.
sure.
But speaking of the teams that I support, uh, I think it's really interesting this year that you are starting to get a brand new franchise, and I'm starting to notice that there are a lot of leagues that are starting to do cards. Like, um, you're getting a lot of women's
Yeah.
basketball cards and collegiate basketball cards. I even when I went to the card store yesterday, they had professional women's soccer cards, and I was unfamiliar that that was even a market. But hey, they had the local team, the Utah Royals. I bought their starter pack, and I was like, you know what? I don't care what the value is on this. I just want to say that I have it because that's a home team. But with the Utah Hockey Club, I feel like it's kind of new-ish territory, because now the card market is big. The Arizona Coyotes, they weren't necessarily a large market from what I gathered from my research, but with them moving to Utah, does that increase the value of the cards for when they were a part of the Arizona Coyotes? And does that also inflate the pricing of the Utah Hockey Club cards themselves?
It can and it can and it can't. The fact that the move did bring eyes onto the club. I mean, as maybe in Arizona they weren't so sought after or followed, but this brings a whole new set of eyes, a whole new state, a whole new fever to follow it. A new franchise like that being moved is a big deal. So yes, the card values can absolutely increase for multiple reasons. One being people want to collect the last Arizona cards because they'll think they have value because they're no longer going to be printed, or they want to collect the inaugural season's cards of the new Utah team because it's the only time that you can say, I have the first year of a franchise's, cards. You only get one shot at that. So it absolutely can increase the value. But at the same time, I mean, sometimes, you had loyalists that were in Arizona that may not, transfer over because they're hurt and scorned that they lost their team. So you have the both sides of it, but overall, I think that it's a huge increase for a team that wasn't so heavily sought after for a while.
Yeah, and trust me, if you saw the Arizona Coyotes loyalists, unfortunately, it's the small few that are louder than the most,
Yeah.
and there has been a lot of chatter, negative chatter, from that side, and it's unfortunate because again, these are guys that you've been supporting, and due to what had been rumored a very bad owner, um, you are turning against a new fan base that wants to support what was once your old team. I think that's kind of sad, and even like in television rights, in down in Arizona, they now get Vegas Knights games rather
Yeah.
than Utah Hockey Club games,
Oh
which I
man.
think is interesting. I would think that you would want to still promote your old team, but I'm not in that business
Yeah.
and selling those types of contracts, but you know, I wish that those fans would carry on over, but to each their own.
We're
Um,
seeing the same thing happen like in Oakland with the Athletics, or when the Raiders moved, even when the Rams and Chargers moved. I mean, it's just it's people are they take it personally because, as you know, and I know, that there's nothing more personal than your sports teams when it comes to it.
yeah, no, like even though I know the Jazz have never won a championship, if you talk bad about my team, I will either agree to the obvious or I will defend those boys until I'm 6 feet under.
Same.
But speaking of the Jazz, they're having a not so great season, as I like to say, poop for coop.
Yeah.
Um, but there's still value in those players as far as their cards, whether it's guys like Keontae George,
He's
Isaiah
the big one.
Collier, Walker Kessler. Uh, I was just curious, as a fan of the Jazz and a somewhat new card collector, would
Mhm.
it be in my best interest to invest in those younger guys? Or should I invest in, say, like a Lowry Markkinen who just signed his long-term extension? What player do you think has the best upside for the Utah Jazz?
So the answer to your first question, which one you should invest in, it all depends on what your strategy is or your risk that you want to take. Do you want to invest in the solid guys that are going to be consistent, like the Laurie Market and even a John Stockton rookie or stuff? Those are your Apple stocks of the Utah sports market. But if you want to take a risk and see if your investment grow, I think the number one is Keontae George. I was looking up his. So one of the most sought after cards for a basketball is the Panini National Treasures True Rookie Patch Auto. The 99. It's out of a product that's like between $10,000 and $15,000 for 32 total cards. And some of those, like for example, Luca's RPA goes for six figures. Keontae's George last two sold on average for 700. So if he continues his excel into stardom and everything like that, and can lead this team, there's a huge value and upside to be purchasing his cards.
And that's where like a lot of these breaks, like that number alone, just the purchase price, I'm sure that will scare people. But that's where
Oh
these
yeah,
breaks really come in handy because I mean, you
yes.
could be putting in what $50 to $150, and you might get something with a six-figure return.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, some of the biggest cards we've pulled for customers is we pulled a Tom Brady 101 game used shield off his jersey autograph that was sold for six figures. And I think the guy had a total of like I don't know, $1,000 or $1,500 invested into the break, and his return was massive. And it's
And that
great for guys to be able to buy teams that and collect their players for cheap. Like you said, the Utah has a down year. No huge rookie on the team, so the cost of buying the Utah Jazz in breaks is low, and you're able to stockpile all these rookies and all these guys that you want, and you don't have very much money into it.
because even locally, with some of the card shops here, like I found an Isaiah Collier USC Trojans Prism card,
Mm-hmm.
and it was on the shelf for like $1.50, $2.
Yeah.
Which
Yep.
I mean, like I know it's not a highly valued card, but when you're looking at some of the other stuff that they had on their shelves, you're finding a lot of Jazz players where I think the most expensive thing I saw was a signed basketball by Johnny Juzang for $60. So, like right now, if you are a Utah sports fan that's looking at getting into that hobby, I think
Mm-hmm.
now's a good time to just start investing because nobody's looking in
Absolutely.
this direction.
I agree. I mean, obviously Keontae turned some heads. They saw him this weekend and things like that. So, there is publicity on him and things like that. But guys like him, like you said, Collier are great investments for sure. The one recommendation I do always say is that you brought it up that you saw some college uniform cards. If you are investing for financial reasons, I always recommend to go with the pro uniform cards as they always hold a higher resale. If you're going just for pure collecting, then obviously just get whatever you want and whatever you enjoy.
And that's why I got myself the Isaiah Collier card because, like, yeah, is there a little bit of financial return I would like? Yes, but that's not like an immediate thing that I'm looking at. This is something that, you know what, this is something I could show my kids down the line. And oh, now I'm showing my kids this card, and this is when he was 18, 19 years old, and now he's retiring at 39.
In the Hall of
Uh,
Fame, hopefully for you.
hopefully. Um, But speaking of colleges, Utah always has a bunch of football players that make their
Yes.
way into the NFL, whether it's BYU, University of Utah. Occasionally, you get some Utah State guys. As far as what Top Notch currently has on their market, who are some Utah college football athletes that you currently have up for sale?
We actually it sold a little while ago. Our biggest one was, Puka Nakua. We sold his 1 of 1 select rookie auto, and I think it did $1,720.
Good payday.
I mean, he's definitely the biggest guy that I can see from the Utah, especially when we talk in the list of players you gave me, Taysom Hill's good, but he doesn't have a huge market because they never know if they're going to use him properly. I don't think they use Taysom Hill properly or enough. But Dalton Kincaid, great, and he's definitely climbed the ranks, being with Josh Allen and everything like that. But I mean, Puka is definitely the standout, and he's potentially a 1,500-yard guy every year going forward. And I think right now he's the biggest active player that, in terms of card value, from the Utah that I see.
And of course, Puka Nakua, touchdowns left and right, breaking rookie records, that's going to turn heads whether you are a Utah or not. But what about say Jalen Johnson from the Chicago Bears? He's one of those top guys on defense, but does that translate to card value?
There's not a ton of cards for defensive players, really. There's only a couple sets that collect them, unless they're like an absolute all-star, But there's very few sets that have those. Contenders football is one of them. But in terms of defensive players, there's not many players that hold a huge market in the sports card world.
And that's kind of disappointing. Just me being a Utah guy, that was a part of my core. Whether it was Tyler Huntley, Zach Moss, Devin Lloyd, those were the guys that I really was excited to see go into the NFL. And granted, some people will say that it doesn't necessarily count, but seeing Tyler Huntley go to the Pro Bowl, Zach Moss popping off the way that he did, and then Devin Lloyd breaking some Jaguars records.
Oh yeah.
I would think oh, that would have some great value, but that's also a very niche market, and I didn't know if that would translate over, especially for maybe even some of those offensive guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's really in the card market, the highest valued cards are the skill players, quarterbacks, wide receivers, even running backs have taken a massive hit over the last few years because most running backs don't last 5 years anymore unless there's, the top 3 that do. So really, because people in the market in buying and stuff want longevity of players, and obviously quarterbacks and wide receivers are two of the positions that are, that play a long time most of the time if they're really good, and they're in the spotlight 24/7. I mean, when was the last time a NFL franchise, had a defensive tackle as their, pride and joy of press releases? It doesn't happen as often as it should.
Yeah, and probably the last one that I could truly think of would probably be the Rams with Aaron Donald.
And he carried that team. And his value is okay. He has good value. Guys like him, or even like Lawrence Taylor, being a Giants fan, that was my favorite defensive player of all time. Guys like that'll do phenomenal. Deion Sanders, because of what he did and things like that. But it's really, it has to be those guys that are cat and bound no matter what, to really super show a value for it.
And now with a Super Bowl under his belt, I'm really curious if I'm assuming it's probably not a high value since he didn't necessarily play, but he was on the team. Does Britton Covey have any sort of value on the market?
Not really. I mean, sure, a Super Bowl ring may add 10% to a card, but
10% to a dime.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The thing is, the sports card market used to be kind of like, a silver and gold market. Very consistent, slower paced, and just kept trucking along. Now it's the stock market. I mean, you could have a card be worth $5 one day, $1,000 the next day, and then 2 cents the next day, depending on how they do. I mean, you can watch a card influx and change every week as how they perform. So it's really incredible how the market and has changed. Like Steve said, it ruined it after COVID, but that's what it did. It created literally an entire investment market rather than just a collector's market.
So you, as somebody that is super involved in the industry on a daily basis,
Yep.
in your opinion, do you feel that it is best to buy then sell, or buy and wait?
Depends on what you're buying. If you're buying into a new like if you're getting into one of our new release breaks that the product just came out that day, we're opening it. I always say sell immediately because you're going to have a super high rate of return this first week because people want those cards desperately. You can then wait 3 months and most of the time buy the card back for half or three quarters of what you just sold it for. But some people like to wait. There are terms of waiting that plays off. Like for example, baseball prospects. You buy Bowman baseball with the kids that were just drafted that aren't going to see the majors for 3 to 4 years. Yeah, you hold those and they become Hall of Fame players. Then yeah, you're sitting on a gold mine. So it really is just there's no right or wrong answer for that.
And then I was going to ask if that works the same way for hockey, because I mean, you're going to draft some guys that are 17, 18 years old,
Yeah.
and they're not even going to even touch the league until they're 22, 23 years old.
For sure. I mean, unless it's a McDavid or a Connor Bedard or someone that has the huge hype. Yeah, I mean, as you know, hockey, the flagship signature card that people collect is the Young Guns, which is like their premier rookie card, and it's worth a ton if you have the right player and the variations and things like that. Um, if it's someone that is that you really truly think is going to be uh, a star that breaks out in a couple of years that doesn't have a lot of hype now, I would say sure hold. But if it's someone that does have hype right now, I always say take the money while you can because you never know, that guy could have a career-ending injury, or as what's coming out now could have an issue like Justin Tucker is. Now he just ruined his entire legacy and things like that. You never know what's going to happen.
And then, as somebody that is just brand new to the hobby itself, do you believe that there is good value in retail boxes?
Oh
And do
yeah.
you feel that that's like enough of an investment, or do you feel that if you are going to make this a hobby, buy hobby boxes only?
No, I don't think it's just hobby boxes. There are plenty of products that have some of the biggest hits of the product come out of retail. But you have to buy excuse me, the right retail products. There's some that are just designed for retail that have no possible chance at any of the big hits, the big numbered cards, the autographs, the SSPs, the case hits that they call it. Or then there's some that do. For example, one of my favorite retail rips is Prism, basketball, football, whatever. Because you can still hit monster cards out of that product that you can still hit in hobby.
And then, kind of going back to hockey, I always notice that with their product, there's not a large amount of product that they put out. Like there's maybe 3 or 4 box sets that you'll see every quarter. Like even when I ventured into retail for hockey cards maybe a month ago, they had one singular Series 1 Upper Deck in there. And when I went to look online to see when Series 2 was coming out, it felt like it was online only. I even went to multiple card shops in my town, and they were like, "Yeah, Series 2 hasn't come to us yet." Um, I know I've been told to be weary of buying cards online, but what are some ways to maybe avoid some of the scalpers that are resealing some of these packages?
I mean, buying from major companies that for example, eBay. Can you turn that down, please? Turn the heat down. Sorry. The one thing that you need to do in terms of that is buy from major companies. Like you buy from eBay, you have a money back guarantee. So if it's resealed or anything like that, you have the options. The resealing was crazy for a while. It's died down a lot now because the retail market isn't little quadruple 5, 6 times it was like during the pandemic. Um, I mean, there's major companies in that you can buy from like the big card companies online and things like that, and that you're pretty well protected. I would normally stick to those. I wouldn't buy from like Facebook Marketplace too much for sealed boxes or random people or stuff like that. The thing with hockey, it's tricky because there's only two companies that produce hockey, really. It's Upper Deck and O-Pee-Chee, if you want true hockey. And they have a lot of, like, for example, Upper Deck was tough because for a while, I don't know if it still happens, but you have to have a physical storefront, a brick and mortar store in order to order product from them.
Hmm.
So I don't know if they still do that or not, but us breakers that don't have a brick and mortar store, for the longest time, we can't get Upper Deck products.
Interesting. Well, speaking of your breaks, if you want to dive into some future projects that Top Notch is looking into, maybe even some future breaks that you guys are looking at doing and how you can get involved.
Yeah, so you can find us on our website at topnotchsportsclub.com. We also have a Facebook group, Top Notch Sports Club. That's where we do all of our breaks. The one big thing that we did recently in the last year or so is we created a website that you can sign into when you sell cards with us on eBay, and it live tracks all of your items and listings from eBay just on your website. You don't have to search through eBay for your listings. In terms of, also you can find all of our information about card grading there. We do group submissions for people to get their cards graded at relatively inexpensive prices. By doing it as a group, you pay less in shipping. You actually pay less in for the cards because we have, corporate discounts. In terms of breaks, we do breaks every day, all the way from sports cards. I've been doing a lot of memorabilia. I don't know if you've seen a lot of the memorabilia we've been doing. I do football helmets, signed back, all of it's signed and authenticated, basketball, multi-sport, things like that. You can go on our Facebook page and take a look at that. We are also looking at expanding our website and jumping on a couple other platforms. I can't say the specific platforms as of yet, but we are looking to expand our reach on the breaks to different platforms available other than just Facebook. But that's really what we're doing right now. And we're just hobbyists that truly enjoy sports cards. We love connecting with people. We love talking to our customers. And a lot of our customers I talk to on a daily basis on my phone, just as friends. And that's just really what we do there. And we just want to make it a fun, safe, and as affordable as we can environment for people to follow their passion like we do.
And like it's really cool with this sort of industry because even when I ventured into this card shop yesterday, I had never been there before. I just was wearing a Utah Hockey Club sweatshirt because I wanted to let everyone know what I was there for. Um, but I walked in, the guy with zero contact already knew, like, hey, this is probably the product that you're looking at. I saw you eyeing these jazz cards. Here's a box where I think you could probably find a decent amount of jazz content in.
Yeah.
Um, and even like started working out like little deals and stuff with me. So it's really cool to see that even with no interaction, these people know exactly what you're there for. And even with the conversations, he was asking me like, "How did I hear about the store? How long have I been a part of the hobby?" And started like getting to know me as an individual during the checkout process. It didn't even feel like it was small talk, even though it probably was. But it definitely felt like it was a way for him to be like, "This is a trusted store. We want to see you back here, whether you're
Yeah.
dropping $1 on a single card or coming for a meet and greet with a player, and get your photos, signatures, or dropping $1,000 on a box. Like, we don't care what you're doing here. We just want to see that you are helping grow this hobby back to, I guess, the days of old."
Yeah. And that's an awesome LCS. That's a great card shop. If you have that, and then that's fantastic because there are some out there that are not like that. They're just business, and that's not us. I like to know my customers because I also like to know what teams they are. I like to know what they like because I don't want to tag them or offer them something that they're not going to enjoy or they're not going to want. And that's another reason of getting to know the people is to be able to better assist them and just to be good human beings. It's not hard to be nice. Like, I don't understand how a lot of these places you can't just treat it just as a business because there's too much competition out there to just be that.
Well, speaking of creating great connections and, being there for the community, I have partnered up with Salty Ice Insiders. another podcast here in Utah covering all things hockey. And we are doing a little sponsored group event this Sunday on February 23rd for the Utah Hockey Club's return to the ice against the Vancouver Canucks. We decided to partner up and decided that we are going to be giving away a pair of tickets to join what we are considering our fan section. So, what that means is that we want the loudest and rowdiest fans possible to join us in this section and lead all of these chants that we are going to be doing for these games, because we want the community to know that this fan base is ready to become a big part of the NHL. And along with that, I am donating a second set of tickets to go to this game as well. And mind you, these tickets, you get full view of the ice. It is considered partially obstructed just because of the seating. And if people lean forward, you might lose out on a little bit. But these seats, you are able to see both goals. You are able to see everything that
Nice.
goes on in the arena. I know that's been a big concern with the Utah Hockey Club this year, is that there's obstructed seats. And why would you pay for those? Well, let's not have you pay for them at all, and let's get you into this giveaway. And Justin actually has the question for you to
That I
enter
do.
into this giveaway. So lead the way, Justin.
Okay, folks. The last time Utah played Vancouver, Utah won in overtime 3-2. Who scored the game-winning goal?
And if you are unaware, there is a very big hint in this video as we are talking on who may or may not have scored that game-winning goal. So, with that being said, Justin, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I really appreciate it. I mean, friend, business, it's awesome to
Yeah,
just
thanks for
have you
having me.
be
I
a
had a
part of it.
blast. I love just talking sports. This is great.
Yeah, and hopefully this will carry over into maybe some future endeavors. Who knows?
Absolutely. We're ready.
Yeah. But that is another bean on the scene, and we will catch you guys next time.